2023 called into question what we know about the podcasting industry, the podcasting landscape, and the podcasting industry are evolving. What do you need to know to shape your podcasting strategy in the next 12 months? I had the opportunity to chat with a handful of smart podcast people that shared their predictions, their thoughtful observations, and their wishes for the podcasting industry in 2024. I hope that their voices inspire you to think deeper about your work and your voice and how we can, as a podcasting community, come together so we can create the podcasting industry that we can all be proud of. In this video, you'll be hearing from Krystal Hill, independent producer and knower of all the things. Gabriel Soto from Edison Research. Lisa Laporte from Twit. James Cridland from Pod News. Stephen Robles from Riverside.fm. And Jeanine Wright from Wondery. Let's jump right into it with podcasting and podcast evolution.
I am excited about the expanding definition of what is a podcast. I think it's really fun to start see both at like the both edges, and what I mean by like that intersection between long form podcasts and audiobooks, and kind of like exploring the ambiguity there, and then what we're seeing happening in short form content, and now seeing, you know, Apple Podcasts include things like oral reads of news stories, and is that a podcast? And then like radio broadcasts to podcasts, and then now podcast video.
You know, there's so many that are either have been podcasting for a long time and are just audio heads. Like, I love audio. Audio first is my deal. But if you want a podcast to be discovered in 2024 and later, like, you have to have a video component, even if you're just sharing clips. And so I would love to see the podcast community, you know, not fight it anymore. Like, let's just embrace it. Let's learn how to do this.
We used to be very strict about what we thought a podcast was. And now that we're leaping off of just the RSS as the distribution platform, and we're experimenting with these other kinds of mediums, that definition of what is a podcast gets to expand, and we get to expand with it. And I think that's really fun.
So, you know, it's interesting, just recently, exclusive shows on Spotify have become unexclusive now. And so I'm encouraged that looking to 2024 and beyond, I think podcasting as an open source, like RSS driven, you can listen to your podcast in any app that you want. I think that's going to be around for a long time.
So it won't just be a conversation around Apple and Spotify anymore. It'll be a conversation about other podcast platforms as well. And of course, YouTube, after everything that they did last year, will be a big thing too.
How we come into meaningful conversations matters. Excitement, curiosity, encouraging discourse, and kindness is a win for all of us. Now, podcasting is fully grown, and podcast advertising is giving cool girl energy.
I believe we're going to continue to see that podcasting advertisers are going to aggregate to the larger agencies. You see Group M taking over. So I believe you're going to see more podcasting agencies go away, and they're either going to aggregate into the big marketing agencies again, or they're going to come down to the iHeart, Spotify's, AdvertiseCast, all these people that have the podcasts to promote on. So that's one thing I'm seeing that's happening now, and I believe it's going to progress even further next year, because now the big boys want to get into podcasting because they're realizing there might be something here.
We have so many new advertising clients coming into the space, and they're really expecting podcasting to be like a more mature medium, like the other channels that they're used to investing in. And we're now starting to see the measurement and attribution tools, the brand safety tools, even Wondery, we're rolling out frequency capping now. And so these are like the tools that these advertisers are expecting us to have. And we're just now getting them in a broad way, and being able to get some standardization in the industry that I think is going to be so great for us to be able to open up and welcome many of these new advertisers into podcasting.
These are some incredible insights into the podcasting landscape that we'll all be exploring further in 2024. But speaking of audiences, what about them?
the topic I'm most excited about is kids podcasts. There's this misconception of there's no profitability, there's no profit to be made when you invest in a kids podcast. But in reality, if I asked you the question, out of any generation, Gen Z, millennials, Gen X or boomers, or Generation Alpha, which are the kids, which generation has the highest household income? It's actually the household of the kids that have the highest income. Kids podcast listeners are more likely to live in a household with two incomes, two parents, right? So if you want to be where the money is, this is a message for advertisers, then you have to invest in the kids' podcasts.
I think we'll see a lot of growth, but probably that growth happening outside of the US. I think places like Europe, places like Latin America are where there's real growth going on.
There are a lot of Latinos who are older that do not know what a podcast is, and many of these Latinos are Spanish dominant. So they aren't familiar with the term. If we can show them what a podcast is, then chances are they're gonna pick up listening just by virtue of understanding and being educated on what a podcast is. We also know that there are a lot of Latinos who use social media like Facebook. They're tech savvy enough to be on social media. They're tech savvy enough to fire up an app and use podcasts. And listen to them. It's just the awareness, the education, and teaching them about what it is that's the barrier between listening.
I don't know about you, but I see those barriers, especially as we look at the broad spectrum of audience growth across generations, from our Generation Alpha to our beloved boomers. But education and awareness aren't the only things that we can do better. I'm a naturally optimistic person, and I wanted to frame things in a more inspiring and expansive way. So I asked, what do you wish for podcasting?
I like to be optimistic when I can be. So I'm hoping for collaboration. I'd like to see more Black people entering the space, the podcast space. You're seeing a trend of crunch down. Right? You're seeing a trend of fatigue. But I think, Black folks, they always keep going. So I think you're gonna see just more people kind of get that shine and continue through and find their voice and keep going on. I would love just non-Black people to be interested in Black stories without having to tell them themselves. I feel like a lot of the industry only gets interested in a Black story when they're telling it. And you can come and listen to a Black podcast and just enjoy it. You might not get all the pieces, but that's okay. I listen to a lot of Spanish music and only pick up a couple of the words because the beat is fire. You can enjoy things and know it's not necessarily for you, but pick up things that you might not have learned anyway. So I would really love the industry to just be like, yo, this is a great show, even though I understand that it's not necessarily made for me.
I want to make sure that the independent podcast community is still viable, where an individual or a very small podcast network can still get sponsorships, can still grow an audience, and still find an audience, even in all the marketing that these huge brands and huge shows are doing.
I would love to see people, as well as brands and agencies and anybody that's trying to buy on podcasting, remember that podcasting is about community, and you don't want to overly track communities. You want to allow the trusted hosts, that's the reason why people are listening to podcasts, do their own ad reads and bring the information to them in that fashion. I feel like that advertising and sponsorship has taken over to the point where they want to track everything to death. And I believe that's the wrong pathway for podcasters. We're about community and bringing people together. We don't want to be overly tracked.
What I wish that the industry would do is not to forget where we've come from, not to forget that we are open. Podcasting is open, and that's both open in terms of platforms and RSS and all of that technical stuff, but it's also open in terms of talking to one another and sharing information and sharing ideas and sharing best practice.
$1 bajillion. Come find me, give me money. I just want money and yogurt. Me personally, yogurt. The industry for Black people, money. I am simple, but it's gotta be dairy free because I got lactose problems.
I just love her. And yes, calling it out. Continued investment in diverse creators who resonate with undersourced and overlooked communities holds one of the keys to democratizing the medium and ensuring expansion and growth. With podcasting's 20th birthday on the horizon, we've had almost 2 decades of podcast and content creation. And while we've learned a lot, there's still so much more to discover. We're now in a place where we get to ask more nuanced questions. We get the chance to mold the experience that we wish into the podcasting industry. We can pinpoint areas of improvement while reinforcing our commitment to podcasting's culture and community. We can hold all of these things at the same time. We can focus on infrastructure and definitions. We can focus on bolstering ad tech and attribution data. We can focus on continuing to make the industry exciting to new brands and advertisers, and inspire and educate around the power of audio, and invite future audiences to embrace the medium from where they are. We get a chance to create the industry that we want. A big thank you to Krystal and Gabe and Lisa and Steven and James and Jeanine. We so appreciate you and the discourse that you bring to the podcasting industry. Let's go 2024.